I never expected a single email could destroy my life, but there it was, glowing on my phone's screen like a bomb waiting to explode. We're done. It's over. Just like that, my husband divorced me by email. And not just that, he accused me of something so cruel, so unbelievable, I could barely breathe, that I was sleeping with my boss. I was thousands of miles away, halfway across the world on a transfer for my job, excited about a fresh start, focused on proving myself. Instead, I got a dagger in my back. No calls, no explanations, just a cold email that ended everything. Before I continue this intense story, I want to hear from you. Yes, you. Have you ever been through a messy divorce? Or maybe one that was surprisingly easy? What was your experience like? Drop your story in the comments below because I want this to be a space where we can share, support, and connect. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any real-life stories like this one. Now, let's get into it. I stared at that email like it was some cruel joke, but no one was laughing. I reached for my phone, dialing his number a dozen times, each time sinking a little lower when it went straight to voicemail. I wanted answers. I deserved answers, but all I got was silence. The man I trusted, the man I loved, had abandoned me with nothing but a few cold words on a screen. And that accusation, me and my boss, the man I worked with every day, who had always treated me with respect, who I barely even talked to outside of work emails. It was a lie, a twisted story to justify whatever bitterness had consumed him. My name is Emily. And before that email, before the divorce, my life looked nothing like the chaos I was drowning in. I met Michael on a crisp autumn afternoon, the kind where the air feels electric with possibility. We were both working late at a marketing firm in Chicago, the office nearly empty. I was fresh out of college, full of dreams and nerves. He was already a rising star, confident, sharp, with a smile that could disarm anyone. He asked me out for coffee that night. I said yes. We talked for hours, about everything and nothing. It was easy, natural, like we'd known each other forever. Within months, we were inseparable. We built something real. We rented a small apartment in the city, decorated it with thrift store finds and late-night IKEA runs. We fought. Sure, who doesn't? But we always made up. We had plans, trips we'd take, a house we'd buy, maybe kids someday. Michael was my rock. Or so I thought. When I got the overseas transfer, I was excited but nervous. It was a huge opportunity for my career, and he promised he'd support me no matter what. We talked every day before I left. He told me he loved me. That distance was nothing. But once I was gone, everything changed. At first, the distance was just a challenge we both accepted. I was in London, throwing myself into work, learning the ropes in a new city. Michael was back in Chicago, handling his job and life. As usual, our daily calls were my lifeline. Hearing his voice, sharing the little moments, that's what kept me sane. But slowly, the calls started to thin out. What once was an hour-long conversation became 15 minutes, then just a quick check-in. I chalked it up to busy schedules, to the time difference. I told myself it was normal, but then, the tone changed. His voice lost the warmth it once had. When I asked about his day, he gave short, clipped answers. When I shared something important or exciting, his response felt distant, distracted, like I was speaking into a void. I tried to hold on to the good times, the memories that made us who we were. I reminded myself that relationships take work, especially long distance. But deep down, I felt a creeping coldness that no explanation could warm. It wasn't just the calls. Messages went unanswered for hours, sometimes days. He stopped sending the little things, photos, jokes, good morning texts. I started to feel like a ghost in his life, a chapter he was ready to close. When I finally confronted him, asking if everything was okay, his reaction was like a slap to the face. Instead of reassurance, I got silence, then defensiveness, then anger. I don't know if this is working anymore, he said one night, voice low and bitter. Maybe we're just holding on to something that's already dead. Those words cut deeper than any knife. I begged him to fight for us, to give me a chance to fix whatever was wrong. But the truth was clear, he was already gone. And when that email landed in my inbox, cold and final, accusing me of things I never even dreamed of, I understood what had really been happening all along. The distance didn't create the cracks, it just revealed the fractures that were always there. The days after the email were the hardest I've ever faced. Every night, I lay awake in my small apartment halfway around the world, replaying everything Michael and I had shared. How did it all fall apart so fast? How could the man I trusted with my heart and future turn on me without a word? I tried, calling him again, desperate for any kind of explanation. The calls went unanswered, no texts, nothing but silence. It felt like I was disappearing from his life, erased without warning. I didn't know at first how far Michael's betrayal would reach, but it didn't take long for the damage to seep into every corner of my life. What started as his cruel email soon turned into a web of lies he spun behind my back. Michael had told one of his closest friends, the one person he trusted most outside of me, his version of the story. That friend's wife was just as quick with words and even quicker with gossip. Before I knew it, the rumor mill had started churning. Through some twisted chain of whispers, that wife shared the story with a colleague at my workplace in London. That woman, hungry for drama, ran the tale like wildfire through the office halls. What was once a quiet space of work became a battleground of silent judgments and whispered conversations. At first, I noticed the subtle shifts, the sudden quiet. When I entered a room, the way people avoided my eyes, or glanced at me with thinly veiled suspicion. Then came the side eyes, the half-hidden smirks, the snide comments I caught when I thought no one was listening. I was being slut-shamed, branded not just as unfaithful but as someone who used sex to climb the ladder. Every promotion I earned, every success I achieved, was suddenly pinned on my so-called affair with my boss. They whispered that I'd sold myself for favors, that my work was a lie. I tried to ignore it, to stay professional, to prove them wrong with nothing but my work ethic. But the poison spread so fast it was suffocating. The days stretched on like an endless storm, each one heavier than the last. I was barely holding on, drowning in whispers and sideways glances, when I got a call from my cousin, Sarah, back in Chicago. She was the one person I thought I could still trust, the one link to a life that felt like it was slipping through my fingers. But that call shattered whatever fragile hope I'd been clinging to. "Emily," she said, voice low, like she was afraid the walls might hear. "I saw him." For a second, I didn't understand. Saw who? Then the words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Michael, he's moved on." I gripped the phone so tight I thought I might break it. "What do you mean, moved on? How?" Sarah hesitated, like she hated being the bearer of bad news. "I saw him last week, out on the street, with another woman. They were driving your car." My breath caught. Our car, the black Mustang we bought together after years of saving. The car we promised would be ours forever. That car was a symbol of everything we built, every dream we had. "They looked happy," Sarah said quietly, laughing, holding hands. "It was like you never existed." The image burned itself into my mind. Michael, smiling in our car, with someone else. The woman's face wasn't familiar to me, but it didn't matter. The betrayal was the same. I felt my chest tighten, a cold, sinking feeling that twisted deeper than any pain I'd felt before. It wasn't just that he left me. It was that he'd already replaced me, gone on like I was a mistake he'd erased. I wanted to scream, to run back to Chicago and confront him, but the weight of everything held me down. I was thousands of miles away, alone in a city where I was already an outsider. The betrayal wasn't just in that email anymore. It was in the life he was building without me, in the dreams he was sharing with someone else, in the car we once called ours, now carrying a stranger. About a week after that call from my cousin, the final blow landed. The divorce papers arrived. They were cold, official, and demanding. Michael wanted me to sign, to give up everything, to erase the life we built with a few scribbles on a form. I held the papers in my hands and felt a wave of anger and exhaustion crash over me. But beneath it all, I knew what I had to do. I couldn't just sit back and let this man write my story for me. I needed to face this head on. I spoke to my boss, David, a man I respected not just for his leadership but for the quiet strength I'd seen beneath his calm. David was no stranger to pain. Over the months, we'd shared more than just work conversations. He had told me once about his own messy divorce, about how he'd fought back when everything seemed lost. When I told him I needed to take some time off, to fly back to Chicago and get my affairs in order, he didn't hesitate. "Take all the time you need, Emily," he said, his voice steady. "You've got more fight in you than you realize. And if you ever need anything at all, I'm here." That was the first real support I'd felt since everything started falling apart. It gave me the courage to book the flight, pack a bag, and prepare to face the city that held all my broken pieces. Leaving London was bittersweet. I had built a life there, fought to prove myself, only to have it poisoned by lies. But going back wasn't defeat. It was the start of my comeback. The moment the plane touched down at O'Hare Airport, a flood of memories hit me, some good, most painful. Chicago wasn't just a city anymore. It was the epicenter of the betrayal that had shattered my life. The cold spring air bit at my skin as I stepped onto the tarmac, but nothing was colder than the silence that awaited me. I stayed at a small hotel near the city center, trying to steady my nerves before facing Michael. The night before, I went over every word I wanted to say, every question I needed to ask, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. Michael's house was exactly how I remembered it, the same beige siding, the neatly trimmed lawn, the driveway where our Mustang had once sat, now empty. I rang the doorbell and waited, heart hammering in my chest. When he opened the door, his eyes flickered with surprise, then something like guilt quickly masked. "I got your papers," I said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. The house smelled sterile, as if someone had tried to scrub away every trace of me. Michael didn't look me in the eye. "Emily, we don't have to do this here," he said, his voice low. "It's better if we just know." I cut him off, voice firm. "I need to hear it from you. Why? Why did you do this? Why spread those lies about me sleeping with my boss? Do you even care how much you've destroyed?" He shifted uncomfortably. "It was complicated. You were so far away. I thought maybe things were different. Maybe you were different." The words tasted like poison. "You thought I was cheating? Without a single conversation? Without giving me a chance to explain?" He looked away. It didn't matter anymore. I swallowed hard, fighting back tears. "You didn't just destroy me, Michael. You poisoned everyone around me. Friends, colleagues, people who barely knew me started looking at me like I was some kind of joke." He said nothing. When the time came to sign the divorce papers, I didn't feel defeated. I felt resolute. Michael could have the past, the lies, the broken promises. I was ready to take back my future. Returning to London felt like stepping into a shadow of my old life. I had packed up what was left of my things, shipping most of it to my cousin's place back in Chicago. The apartment I once called home now felt empty, like a hollow shell echoing with memories I wasn't ready to face. The first week after signing those divorce papers was the hardest. I told myself I was strong, that I had taken control, that I was moving forward. But the truth was far less noble. I was a mess, distracted at work, forgetting meetings, answering emails with a blank stare. Nights were worse. The silence of my apartment swallowed me whole. I'd lie awake, tears soaking my pillow as memories played on a loop. Michael's smile, our laughter, the dreams we built and shattered. Sometimes the grief was so thick I could barely breathe. I'd ask myself how someone you loved could turn so cold, how trust could be shattered so completely. The loneliness wrapped around me like a weight I couldn't shake. And then, just when I thought I might be starting to heal, I heard the news that broke me all over again. Michael had remarried. Not months, not years, just weeks after our divorce was finalized. He had already tied himself to someone else. Someone new. The woman was a stranger to me, but the reality of her existence was a dagger twisting in my chest. It was like he had erased me completely, moved on like I was nothing more than a chapter he could close and forget. I couldn't believe it. How could he be so cruel, so fast? That night, I cried like I hadn't in days. Months slipped by, slow and steady, like the gradual thaw after a long winter. I was starting to pull myself together, piece by piece. The pain didn't disappear, but it dulled into a steady ache I learned to live with. Work became my anchor. The office buzz, the deadlines, the small victories, they reminded me that I was still here, still fighting. Then the news hit me like a thunderclap. The company Michael worked for back in Chicago had been bought by my own company. The merger was a big deal. Corporate reshuffles, layoffs, transfers. Some employees were let go without ceremony, while others were moved to London to fill roles at our headquarters. And then I heard the name that sent a chill down my spine. Michael, he was one of the ones being transferred to London. I felt a mix of shock, disbelief, and a cold, simmering anger. The man who had left me in ruins was about to be walking the same halls I did, sharing the same office space, maybe even running into me in the break room or the elevator. What made it even more complicated was his wife Jessica. She ran a business in Chicago, a boutique design firm she had built from scratch. Moving with Michael to London wasn't an option, at least not immediately. Her work kept her anchored in the city, and he was left with no choice but to make the move alone. About a month after Michael's transfer to London, the air between us was thick with unspoken tension. We worked in the same building, same floor, sometimes even the same meetings, but it was like we were ghosts in each other's presence. Our eyes met only in passing, quickly darting away as if afraid a glance could ignite old wounds. He looked different, more guarded, less certain. I could see the weight of his choices pressing down on him, just like it did on me. But despite the years, the betrayal, the divorce, we were still tied by memories too stubborn to fade. Around that time, a colleague named Jason began to appear more often in my day-to-day life. He was someone I'd known professionally, a calm, steady presence in the office, often the one others looked to when decisions needed a second opinion. Jason had a way of cutting through the noise, his quiet confidence balancing the chaos around us. It started small. Coffee on my desk in the mornings, a thoughtful note slipped into my planner, then flowers, bright blooms that stood out against the gray London skies. Jason said he liked me, that he admired my strength through everything I'd been through. One afternoon, as I was leaving a meeting, he caught up to me in the hallway. "Emily," he said, his voice soft but sure. "How about dinner?" "Just the two of us." I hesitated, caught off guard by the invitation. But there was something genuine in his eyes, something kind and steady that felt like a lifeline. "I'd like that," I said quietly, surprised at how much I meant it. The night of the date came and went like a quiet breeze that promised something new. Jason was everything I hadn't realized I needed: patient, attentive, and unexpectedly easy to talk to. He didn't rush me or push too hard. Instead, he listened, laughed at my bad jokes, and made me feel like I mattered beyond the scars I carried. After that evening, he continued to show up in little ways that brightened my days. A coffee left on my desk, just how I liked it, a note with a quote that made me smile, an unexpected text checking in. His quiet courtship was a balm to the rawness still beneath my skin, but while I tried to carve out this small space of peace, the office buzzed with whispers about Michael. Rumors started as quiet murmurs by the water cooler, but soon they spread like wildfire. People said Jessica, Michael's wife back in Chicago, had finally had enough. She'd sent him divorce papers via email, the same cold method that had once ended my marriage. There was talk that she was planning to sell their house, to leave Chicago and start fresh without him. And as if that wasn't enough, rumors swirled that she'd already met someone else, a man who was moving with her out of the city, someone new to share her life with. Michael's face told the story no one needed to repeat. His usually sharp features were drawn tight with stress and exhaustion. His eyes, once so confident, now flickered with pain and frustration. You didn't have to hear the gossip to know he was going through hell. The whispers followed him down the hallways, leaked into meetings, and colored every interaction. He was the new gossip, the office spectacle. People watched with a mix of pity and fascination. Some felt sorry for him, others took quiet pleasure in his downfall. For me, it was a strange mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to feel triumph that justice had finally caught up with him. But beneath that, a deeper part of me felt hollow. I'd been through my own storm, but seeing him unravel reminded me of how fragile we all are when the foundations of our lives crumble. Months had passed since Michael's arrival in London, but the man who once commanded attention now seemed like a ghost haunting the office corridors. The divorce had hit him harder than anyone expected. He was a mess, disheveled, distracted, and completely undone. Deadlines slipped past him like waves he couldn't ride. Reports were late, presentations sloppy. Queries piled up from frustrated managers who no longer recognized the Michael they once knew. His work, which had always been sharp and precise, now looked like the product of someone barely holding on. Rumors spread fast. People whispered about the coffee cup he carried. Some swore they saw him fill it with something stronger than caffeine. His breath carried the unmistakable scent of alcohol for most of the day, fueling the speculation that he was drowning his failures and heartbreak in bottles no one was allowed to see. Yet amidst all this, life was moving on for me. Jason's presence was a steady force, the light in a tunnel that had been dark for far too long. He never pushed too hard, but never let go. One crisp morning, the office buzzed with the usual chatter when Jason surprised everyone. In the middle of a casual team meeting, with Michael sitting just a few seats away and the rest of the staff watching, he asked me a question that changed everything. "Emily," he said, voice calm but full of meaning, "will you marry me?" The room fell silent for a heartbeat, then burst into smiles and quiet applause. Michael's face was unreadable, a mix of shock and something deeper, perhaps regret, perhaps acceptance. "Yes," I said, my voice steady and sure. "Yes, I will." The wedding was a quiet celebration but full of meaning. Surrounded by a handful of close friends and colleagues, Jason and I exchanged vows that weren't just promises to each other but a declaration of new beginnings. For me, it was the closing of a long, painful chapter and the opening of a door I thought had been slammed shut forever. Life changed quickly after that. Jason's dedication and leadership didn't go unnoticed. Within months, he was promoted to CEO of the company, the same company that had once merged with Michael's firm, the same halls where I'd faced whispers and shadows, now buzzed with a different energy. Suddenly, I was known as the wife of the boss. It was strange at first, an unfamiliar title that came with subtle glances, a mix of respect and curiosity. But with Jason by my side, I stood taller, stronger, no longer the woman haunted by the past but one defined by resilience and success. Meanwhile, Michael's decline continued. HR had been monitoring his performance and the growing number of complaints from frustrated teams. His constant lateness, missed deadlines, and sloppy work had become too much to overlook. Rumors about his drinking only added to the concern. One afternoon, he was called into a meeting with HR and management. When he came out, the look on his face told everyone what words hadn't yet. He was fired. The man who had once been my husband, my partner, was now out of a job. It was a harsh ending for him, but for me, it was a hard-earned victory, a reminder that even when life tries to break you, you can fight back, rise above, and create your own future. Thanks for sticking with me through this roller coaster of a story. If you found it gripping, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. I want to hear what you think. And hey, tell me where you're watching from. Let's get this conversation going. Until next time, stay strong and keep writing your own story.